Hi everyone, and welcome to my second YouTube installment for moving through the loss of your canine companion. Today I want to discuss a second step that you need to take, but it's actually chapter 3. The first YouTube that I did was on chapter 1, and that was when to say goodbye, making that decision that nobody ever wants to make on when is the right time. So the second chapter in my book, Moving Through the Loss of Your Canine Companion, is actually Euthanasia Explained. And I understand a lot of people don't want to know. They would rather be kept in the dark about it all. And that's a very personal decision. And everyone has their own right to know or not know. But I felt it was very important to put it in because I think a lot of people are afraid of what they don't know. And so it's explained by Dr. Annie Forslund, who is the veterinarian who euthanized Luke. And she is wonderful. She also wrote the foreword for my book, which I was thrilled and very appreciative that she did. And so I'm not going to talk about it because if you want to read about it and you want to know what's going to happen, you can read that chapter. Even if you have the book and you don't want to read the chapter, it is chapter 2, so you can skip right over it. But it's in there. The next chapter is with one decision made, you move on to the next. So after you've actually made the decision, and let me just say right now, if you've recently made the decision to humanely euthanize your dog, because you have had to come to a decision, whether it was time or not, that's a very brave decision and a tough one for everyone because it is such an emotionally personal decision that needs to be made. And we need to, as the human part of the canine-human connection, feel like we are doing the best thing we can for our dog and making a good decision so that we don't regret our decision. So the next decision is, well, there's 2 more decisions like following after that one decision that is made, and that is where it's going to happen. And as you know, Luke was done at home by Dr. Annie Forslund, and it was an amazing experience, as amazing as, you know, it can be. And so we had already made that decision really before, years and years before. I really didn't know anything about in-home, that option. And so I really looked into it as Luke started to fail and was, you know, really senior. And I discovered that there was quite a few options. And there are some regular veterinarians that will come to your home. Most will not, and a lot have kind of a rule for themselves that you already have to be a patient of theirs before they will euthanize your dog. Now, I have talked to all the different, you know, types, and so there's a lot to think about. There is the decision of when, and usually from the first chapter, when you've made the decision, you've had to think, is this the time? Is this the right moment? Should I wait for a month? So usually when the decision to humanely euthanize our dogs is made, that same decision of when is made. But if you haven't already considered it, then it needs to be thought out. As well as the decision, which is actually a third decision, after the initial first one, and that's whether you will remain by your dog's side with your dog while it happens. Of course, if you're having it done in your home, then more than likely that's why, because you want to be with your dog. A lot of people cannot, and that's fine. That's their decision. Everybody on this planet is walking their own journey, and no one can say this is right or that's right. It has to be right for us. And so I think it's really a good decision to, or at least a recommendation to, have pre-thought of these things. Even if you have, you know, a young puppy, or at least ponder on these things. I truly believe that everyone should read this book, whether you just got a brand new puppy or you have a very old dog, because it prepares you for what can happen, and accidents happen. It's not only people with really old dogs that are going through this. Sadly, many people with very young dogs are having to go through it. So if you've kind of already thought about what you would like to do if something happened, and maybe made a few calls and found out what the process is about making appointments, and who will come, who won't, who allows you to just walk in their door and have it done. So it's all a process. This whole thing is an emotional, personal process. And so the next steps after making that decision, when it's going to be made, where it's going to happen, and what kind of involvement are you going to have during the process. It's all just things just to think about, not to be negative and think, oh my gosh, my dog's going to die tomorrow, but just to have it back there, you know, so when it does happen, you're not scrambling to make a decision that you really, in those emotional times when you're in such an emotional state, it can be nearly impossible to make a well thought out decision that you feel good about. So that's the next few decisions that have to be made. The chapter after this chapter is speaking about in-home euthanasia, and you know, the whole process. So we'll talk about that next time. I hope that I helped a few people. That's why I want to share and just kind of summarize my book and put it out there, because I know so many of us are going to have to go through a very tough time with our dogs. So take care and give your dog a hug.